Today we're talking about the astrology of sexiness. And by sexiness, I don't mean attractiveness. You've seen people, you can have the most beautiful, good looking, gorgeous woman or a man, but you feel stone cold towards them. You don't want to rip their clothes apart. There's no magnetism in them, But there's certain people, and they don't have to be good lookers, they don't have to be young, they don't have to be anything successful or anything, but they have this almost animal-like magnetism, and you wonder while you're in their presence, you want just to touch them, you want to physically be close to them, or you want to rip their clothes apart. This is this kind of raw, deep, and kind of energy, which is, we all have sexual energy, but for some people it's not so abundant as for others. This is actually the life force that we rotate, and some people waste the sexual energy. Some people can be born with a lot of sexual energy, but they kind of waste it on you waste your sexual energy by sexual activities, by orgasming. And if you're constantly doing it, if you're addicted to orgasming a few times a day, you can very quickly dissipate the sexual energy. And for those of you, I'll show you how to see how strong the sexual energy is for someone in their horoscope. You usually know about yourself if you have a strong sexual desire energy within you. It doesn't mean you're sex craved, but you definitely have magnetic influence on people. You definitely have this much more. And the sexual energy is actually what is creative energy. Some of the most creative people, they're known for having had high sex energy, high sex drive, like Picasso, or Pollock, with all their lovers. And highly sexualized people, but they kind of introvert the sexual energy and created great, amazing things. Also, very successful people. Most very successful people are known for having been very highly sexual. And usually they don't dissipate this energy just on sexual activities. They transform it into creative energy, because sexual energy is creative energy transformed to a higher way. So let's see. And I'll teach you after that how to basically, even if you don't have too many the sexual energy indications in your horoscope, or someone else that you want to compare, maybe is this person maybe there's someone in your office that you can't put your finger to why all the men are looking at her, why she's not attractive, she doesn't dress too sexually or anything, but it's like she has this magnetic energy on men. She can wrap them around their finger, even if she's not aware of them. You can be clueless that you have this energy. I have clients that come to me and they say, I wonder why there's so many more good looking, attractive women or men in the office, and all the people of the opposite sex are like looking at me lasciviously I can feel them undress me, and I'm not so good looking, And this is why I'll show you how to see this. Well, what you have to do first, go to my birth chart calculator at astrolada.com. I'm putting a link for you here. And you don't need to know any astrology, maybe a little bit of astrology, because I talk fast, but you can pause the video, listen to it, and maybe research something on the internet which you're not aware of. But usually I think that I'll tell you everything you need to know here. And once you generate your chart, it's good to know your time of birth, because then you can look at the house cusp, and I'll tell you which technique you need to know the time birth for and which you don't. So if you don't know your time birth, you don't consider that technique. But once you generate your horoscope, you'll get something like that. I don't know if you can see it here. A chart like that. And we're gonna work with this chart, because I'm using the circular one, it's easier to see. And with this chart below here, it says planetary detailed table charts, and the circular. So I want you to, and I've made for the little tables below a bigger version here so you can see. And we're gonna work with the planets Venus, Mars, Pluto, and Rahu. You can see them. Everyone has those planets here in this chart. They're indicated like with those abbreviations. Here is Pluto. Here is Mars. Here is Venus. Rahu is here. These are the planets of desire. Let me talk a little bit about that. Venus is the planet of sensuality, of sensual magnetism, of attractive power. If you have a strong Venus, and I'll show you how to see in your horoscope if you have a strong Venus, you have this really magnetic, sensual quality that attract others, like a fly you're like honey for flies, And Venus makes one also very attractive and sweet and feminine in a sense. Even for a man, he can be very magnetic. And Venus gives this, in ancient astrology, Venus rules the semen. And the semen, of course, is the orgasmic energy as well. For a woman, for a man, is the semen. And people with strong Venus, they tend to have more of that. They tend to have more, more virile in a sense. And more life forces that Venus is the planet of regeneration as well. So life forces that regenerate them, healing forces, but there's sexual energy. This is the sexual energy is a transformed energy. It can be transformed into healing. Then Mars is the planet of raw sexuality, more animalistic. Like you see something, you want it, and you go for it. Venus is when something attracts you, pulls you like seductively. Mars is like, like hunger, you're impatient. It's like much more. This is sensuality, Mars is sexuality. So again, it creates a strong sexual energy, but it's not as the Mars sexual energy is more immediate and it's more impatient and it dissipates faster. While Venus one circulates, it's slower, it builds up in waves, Pluto is the higher octave of Mars. Basically, it's much deeper. This is like sexual energy that can almost person can get obsessed over. If someone has strong Pluto in their horoscope, they're the ones that attract stalkers, obsessiveness, that others get totally they can't explain why, but when they're in the presence of someone with a strong Pluto, they just think about even dark sensuality and sexuality. They some kind of a dark fantasy start waking up, like say Grey or Grey's, what was it? 50 Shades of Grey in a sense. But something that's overpowering. Pluto is so deep. It brings buried past life memories of sexuality, and it's kind of tantric. Pluto is very tantric energy. And Rahu is the north node of the moon, which is why we incarnate on Earth. North node of the moon is what we need to learn the most in this lifetime, and that's why Rahu always carry a lot of desire, because if we didn't have desire for what we have to learn, what's the point of incarnating? So it might have almost be like obsessive drive, just like a bit like Rahu, but a bit like Pluto, but Rahu is even more intense, like obsessive drive, obsessive desire for something that, it's almost, I don't know, they have similar energies with a bit of differences each. And Rahu is very intense. Rahu is indicated in astrology as the dragon's head that just wants to eat, and it has no body, it's been cut. It's a dragon that's cut in half, it has no tail, so it cannot store what it eats, so it just eats and wants more, and it's insatiable. So Rahu is desire planet, is not particularly sexual, but it's a desire planet, whatever it's in the horoscope. And if it's in certain combinations, it makes you ravenous about sexual. Ravenous desire is very strong. It whatever Rahu touches, it expands it. It makes it much bigger and much immediate for need for satisfaction, because this is the purpose we incarnate, and we have a drive desire there. And this desire can make us very magnetic again, as I said. Strong passions within one person make them, if they're not explode in random sexual acts and too much of a self whatever I don't even know the word, then this energy becomes so magnetized, the person becomes totally if they have any of those planets, but we talk strong. And then we're going to work with the signs Taurus, Libra, Aries, and Scorpio. They're the two signs ruled by Venus and Mars, the two sexual planets. And Pluto is nowadays rules Scorpio. So those Taurus, Libra, Aries, Scorpio. So let's see. Rule number 1. You're going to the charts and we're going to look at the planetary detail table. You see here, when you have this, you go there, down. I have it here on the bigger. And the planetary detail table, if you can see well, I don't know if it's far away, it's here. So I want you to check if you have any of those. Here is my list of notes. Ascendant. It's all on the planetary detail table. Sun, Moon. These are the major building structures of your consciousness. Moon, Venus, or Mars, or the Lord of the Ascendant. The ruler of the Ascendant is the planet that rules the first house. If you know a little bit more astrology, you'd know, for example, if your Ascendant is Aries, the ruler will be Lord of I'll write it like that, Lord of Ascendant. If your Ascendant is in Aries, the Lord will be Mars. If your Ascendant is in Taurus, Venus is the Lord. If your Ascendant is in Gemini, Mercury is the Lord. If your Ascendant is in Cancer, Moon is the Lord. If the Ascendant is in Leo, Sun is the Lord. In Virgo, Mercury. In Libra, Venus. In Scorpio, Mars. In Sagittarius, Jupiter. In Capricorn, Saturn. In Aquarius, Saturn. And in Pisces, Jupiter again. So if you have, again, even if it repeats, if it's again the Sun, give it 2 points. So if it's the Ascendant, if it's the Moon, Ascendant Cancer, give it another point. So give 1 point if you have any of those planets in Taurus, Libra, Aries, or Scorpio. Basically in Taurus, Libra, Aries, or Scorpio. For each of those planets, give 1 point. And even if the Ascendant, Lord of the Ascendant repeats as one of those Sun, Moon, Venus, or Mars, give it another point. So, why is this? Because those two signs are ruled by Venus and Mars. They're already sexually charged signs. Second, I want you to check if you have Venus. We're going to work with those planets now. Venus, Mars, the one that are above, Pluto or Rahu, and we spoke about each one, what it is. Conjunct one of those 4 angles. For example, you might have Rahu here, where the number 1, 4, 7, and 10 is. The angles of the horoscope are like the backbone. Any planets that are close to the angles, those, this is like a cross. This is the one angle is the horizon, the other one is the, the perpendicular. When you look above on, this is the earth. So the one angle is the horizon, the other one is straight into the sky and below your feet. So that's where, and you'll see where the angles are. Sometimes the 10th house cusp might be here, sometimes the 4th might be here, but I've just drawn them here. So if you have either Rahu here, or Venus, here or here, or Mars here, or Pluto maybe here, one of those 4, any of those 4 planets in any of those 4 angles, where the number 4, 7, 10, and 1 is. Why is this? Because then the planet, whether it's Rahu, Venus, Mars, or Pluto, becomes very powerful when it's on an angle. It vibrates very strongly in your aura. It's been noticed by psychics, and when they look at someone's aura, they feel certain energy, and always this energy corresponds to a planet that's very strong in your horoscope. And one way to see a strong planet is by it being close to an angle. So this, for example, Angelina Jolie has Venus exactly conjunct the Ascendant sign. Okay, she also has Mars exactly close to the 10th house cusp, this angle. And she has Pluto here, like I've drawn it, So she's like strongly magnetized, strongly sexual energy there. Okay, number 3. Give 1 point. If you have like Angelina Jolie will have 3 points. Mars there, Pluto there, Venus there. Some people will have Rahu here, Venus here, or nothing like that. So 1 point for each here. Next one, number 3, is if you have any planets, how do you spell planets? Any planets in the 8th house. In particularly if you have Sun, Moon, the personal planets, Venus, Mars, even Mercury, Sun, Moon, Venus, Mars, Mercury, or Ascendant Lord of Ascendant. That's not law of attraction, that's Lord of Ascendant in the 8th house. And that's the 8th house. The 8th house, you'll see it, it's here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's here. This is the 8th house. The 8th house is the house of sexuality and magnetism in the horoscope. So 8th house will indicate where in your horoscope, basically, I've seen it over and over again. People with planets in the 8th house, they have the scorpionic, because 8th house corresponds to Scorpio, corresponds to Mars and Pluto. They have this very deep, almost mysterious energy, but the sexual magnetism is so powerful. Even if they're subdued, covered up, like you just want to, they have power over you. They are able to transform their sexual energy into power over others, like almost psychological control of some sense. So it's all the, and often the 8th house is the house of power, and you see how, and the house of sex, you see how sexual energy is powerful, but not to manipulate people through sex, but you can transform this sexual energy into personal power if you don't dissipate it. Our 8th house is the house of healing again. So this, the most powerful healing energy comes from transforming sexual energy rather than dissipating it. Okay, give any of those planets 1 point if they're in the 8th house, you know, or if it's, you have the sun and moon, 2 points. If you have Mercury and Lord of the Ascendant, you know, 2 points. Okay, and then the third thing we're going to look at is, I'm going to remove this because I'll need a lot of space now for the third thing. And this is a little bit more complex. And we're going to look at, oh, it's not dry, it's not dry. I can write here. So the third one is when we're talking about, let's see if we have some more battery, yes. And the fourth one is talking about planetary combinations. These are very strong. I mean, wow. The previous ones also are strong, but these are also very strong. So none of them is more important than the other. When I'm going to give you one by one all the possible combinations. Now we're combining Venus, Mars, Pluto, and Rahu with some of the important self factors, which are the sun, moon, the other planets, you know. So if you happen to have Venus, Mars, Pluto, say, I'll give you all the example. Sun, I'm going to use the Sun in the same sign with Venus, conjunct. You'll see it like that, for example. Sun here and Venus will be here. They'll be in the same square type of thing, you know. Anywhere. That's one. Because then a self factor becomes conjunct a factor of sexiness, of sexual energy. Or Sun plus Mars in the same sign. Then give each one of those 1 point. And you might have Sun, Venus, and Mars together. So give 1 point for Sun and Venus, 1 point for Sun and Mars. But for Sun, not only when the Sun is conjunct Mars will give you more sexual energy, but also if the Sun is, we call it opposition, like in the opposite sign. And you see how they're in opposite signs by basically following the lines. So if you have the Sun here and if you have Mars here, they're in opposition. It's very powerful. So not only we show opposition like that, so, or even the square. If you don't know astrology, maybe it's fine to look it up from somewhere, but if Sun is square Mars, so opposition or conjunct, the three different aspects. For Venus is only the conjunction. Then Mars conjunct Venus. So you see like Mars and Venus together in the same square. This is very, very, like for example here in this chart, you can see it says here Mars and Venus, they're together. It's Venus retrograde, but they're together in the same sign. And this is very strong. This makes people like both the planet of sexuality and sensuality together. It becomes highly sexually charged. But also look the opposition. Say if Mars is here and Venus is here, we have the opposition. Give it 1 point as well. Or also Mars square Venus. Mars here, Venus here. Square aspect is when they are 1, 2, 3, 4 signs from each other. Or if Mars is here, for example, Venus will be 1, 2, 3, 4 here. These are the square aspect. Then again, give 1 point. If you have the moon conjunct Venus, square or opposition. So you see moon, say you see the moon here and Venus here, or Venus here and the moon in the opposite, you know, the opposition or the square. So moon with Venus, moon with Mars, because the moon is again a self factor, something that determines your character, and moon with Mars in the same sign, in the opposing, we write opposition like this. So say you have moon here and Mars here, or moon here and Mars here, you see? Opposition of moon and Mars together like that, you know? Or moon and Mars square, 1, 2, 3, 4. Here it is square or square. Okay, now we have the sun with Mars, the sun with Mars, the sun with Venus, Mars with Venus in all the possible aspects. Don't consider the trine and sextile. They're gentle. They don't generate this urgency. Moon with Venus, moon with Mars. And now all of those, again, sun with Pluto. Any of the aspect. Conjunct, square, opposition, you know. So you might have here sun, Pluto here. But for Pluto, you need to be close. They need to be close within a few degrees, 7, 8 degrees the most, 10 degrees the most. Because Pluto is a faraway planet. So you need to, Pluto is written like that in my horoscope. Sun, Pluto. So you can have sun here, Pluto here, or sun here, Pluto here next to it intensely. Or imagine you have like this. I'll show you after. Imagine you have Mars here as well. So you have Sun, Mars, Pluto, Venus. My God, how many points are you going to have? Sun with Pluto 1, Sun with Mars 2, Sun with Venus 3, Venus with Mars 4, Mars with Pluto 5, Pluto with Venus 6. You know, it can be like a bomb of sexuality. And they might fall in Taurus. So then you give each one a point. 1, 2, 3, 4. You know, it's crazy. But okay, Sun with Pluto in all the different aspects. Sun with, well, let's follow again the same thing. Moon with Pluto. Moon conjunct Pluto, but again, give it a smaller orb. Basically, moon in the same sign as Pluto. Pluto is this intense sexual energy. Moon opposition Pluto. Moon square Pluto, but usually then with the Pluto Sun, Pluto Moon, Pluto Venus, Pluto Mars, they're more dark sexuality. They're almost connected to trauma. You know, if you've had a trauma as a child, sexual, somehow you over-sexualize. You start thinking that you'll be loved by over-sexualizing yourself in a sense. So there might be like some darkness, some taboo part of your sexuality, but it's still strong sexual energy, you know. So the moon, all the different combinations with Pluto. The sun, all the different combinations with Pluto. Venus, all the different, Venus conjunct Pluto. Venus opposition or square. My God, some of the most intense women that, not intense, but men that find, I know a friend who men find so attractive. She has Venus square Pluto. Her Venus is here and her Pluto is 1, 2, 3, 4 signs from her, very close, within 2 degrees square. And this woman, and Venus is in the 8th house, so, and it's in a Scorpio sign, so it becomes so intense. And men just, they're mesmerized by her. She's not especially attractive or crazy good looking, but she's amazing. Her sexual energy, and she knows how to control the sexual energy, not to dissipate, how to preserve it. So she says, I don't know why, but since childhood, since the age I was 7, 8, men looked at me. Even women would look at her like, women would get fascinated with her, men fascinated and sexually aroused. And she says, I can control people, I can tell them what to do because of this powerful sexual energy. So Venus Pluto works. Mars Pluto. So Mars conjunct Pluto, Mars opposition, or Mars square, you know. This is the raw sexuality. You can attract more sexually predatory people when you have the Pluto combinations. Mars, Venus, Pluto, Moon, Pluto, Sun. You can attract some predators that get obsessed with you. Mars, Pluto in particular, you can even attract, because of your sexuality, someone might try to, or your fantasies can be quite dark and intense, but again, you can transform those into something creative. Even dark, intense sexual energy can be transformed. So Mars, Pluto, and then Rahu. Oof, that's very strong. I would say that for Rahu, I would even give 2 points. Rahu conjunct, now only conjunct, only for Rahu in particular, only in the same sign. Give 1 point. If Rahu is within 10-15 degrees of the sun, so you have here Rahu and the sun. This makes one very desirous in nature, because Rahu is again this desirer, very charismatic. The most charismatic man I know has Rahu conjunct very closely the sun. Oh, wow. And opposition Pluto, so it gives another. Rahu only for Rahu only conjunctions, no aspects. Rahu is not a planet; it's a point in the sky. So for it, only the conjunctions matter. So Rahu in the same sign as the sun, the same sign as the moon, the same sign as Venus, or the same sign as Mars. For Rahu, it has to be conjunction. Only, 2 by 2, say Rahu here and Venus is here. Rahu magnifies the desire energy of Venus. Rahu here, Mars here. Rahu magnetizes the sexual drive of a person, or especially if they're on an angle, for example. Because remember, if you have any of those planets in an angle, 7, 10, 401, it makes it like a double whammy. So you get 1 point for Rahu being with Mars, 1 point for Rahu being in the 7th at an angle, 1 point for Mars being in the 7th. You can have a lot of combinations. So how many points do you have? I counted mine. They're above 10, 15. It's like, and you might, if you have that many planets, that many points for the sexual energy, first of all, you've noticed that the more number of those combinations I have, the 4 points that I said, the more intense your sexual energy is, the more intense your desire nature is. And when you have a strong desire nature, if you don't dissipate the sexual energy, you can achieve a lot. You can succeed a lot. That's why you come with more energy. And all energy is sexual, and it's transformed later on into higher manifestations. But you've come to do big things. If you have more of those, you've come to do big things. If you're somewhere down, if you're not having achieved anything and you have a lot of those combinations, it's because you're either blocking the sexual energy or you're wasting it with random casual sex encounters, sleeping around, by drinking, by drugging. It dissipates the sexual energy. And sometimes people with high sexual energy, they need it. They need to either have sex or to get drunk because or to somehow to smoke weed or whatever, because the intensity of the energy becomes so much. And if they're not involved in some business, in something creative, they can explode. They can start feeling bipolar or hyperactive, or if they subverted, some depression can come. And so those people that have this, if you have a lot of those combinations, you need to be involved with something you're highly passionate about. Otherwise, physiological problems can follow. Otherwise, you probably have to have a lot of sex or get drunk or get drugged somehow to suppress this energy, or waste it in other ways, or do a lot of sports in some way. But if you have these combinations, you are much more likely to be way above the average ability to succeed in life than other people. And if you don't have any of those combinations, not any, but if you have like only 2, 3 less, if you have very few points of those, then you need to cultivate sexual energy. And you might end up having much more sexual energy and magnetism and attracting the opposite sex and this energy, using it for success as well, than even people who have all of those combinations if they don't use it correctly, if they don't conserve it. So what do you do if you have a little of those combinations? You conserve sexual energy. You try not to orgasm all the time. Try not to masturbate and come 5 times a week. You can stimulate though yourself sexually. You can because this energy starts building up, but you have to sit with it. You have to be conscious with it. Don't suppress it. If you have an urge, for sexuality, you're suppressing it, you're blocking, you can create illnesses. You have to just sit, calm yourself, breathe, and sit with it and feel it circulating in your body. You have to calm your mind. You have to, it's almost like a meditative practice. You just need 4 or 5 minutes, or 4 or 5 minutes, just to, when the sexual energy comes, instead of going either masturbating or having sex or watching porn or whatever, or suppressing it, holding it, or getting drunk to suppress it. So you expulge energy when you get drunk or when you get high in some way. Instead of that, breathe deep and try to cultivate, try to feel it move in your body. And the more you do this, the more of the sexual energy you generate, and it generates here in the womb, even for men and for women here close, where the sexual organs are. You can also stimulate the sexual energy. You can create more sexual energy by movements of hips, by any physical exercise that involves some kind of dancing, some kind of bit more sensual movement, contracting of the muscle down there, the pelvic muscle, the muscle that we, you know what I'm talking about, of the anus, and the front muscles as well, perineum. Contracting it gently, sometimes strongly. This generates a lot of sexual energy, even if you don't have these combinations. If you have them, then you generate sexual energy much faster by contracting of those muscles. And then you start getting turned on when you do that. And when you do that, it's kind of, or even dancing, when there is like sensual movement somehow of the hips here, or some kind of physical movement, again, generates more sexual energy. It doesn't have to be intense. It can be just walking, or a little bit of a, as they say, working out improves your sex drive anyway. So you start generating this energy, but instead of going and, feeling the urge and having to release it in some way, you start cultivating, you start staying present with it, and you start seeing a sparkle in your eye. It's crazy, it's after a few weeks of not drinking, for example, when I see it, or a few days even of not drinking, a few days of not having, you can have sexual intercourse, but don't finish, don't sexually have the final orgasm, because then you dissipate all the energy you've gathered. And I see people, and I notice it, that like the eyes sparkle, they become, others want to be around them, they have more powerful influence. But if they don't know how to stay present with this energy, they can look nervous, they can look stressed, even aggressive in some way. And this is when you are not conscious, when you're not consciously staying present with that energy, then it can harm you. But to stay conscious with this energy, again, you need maybe 4 or 5 minutes. Just feel it pulsating in your womb, in your whatever, around your body. It's kind of more acquiring more meditative state. And every time you get very much aroused about something, if you want to preserve this energy, breathe, relax, and then go and do something, because your creativity will be 5 times more than at the other time. Because this sexual energy, once you preserve it and you don't waste it, you can use it within 5 minutes of sexual arousal. If you don't finish, if you don't come, then you can immediately. Sometimes when I wake up from a dream that was quite turning on and excitable, and I'm like, oh my God, I want to do something. I want to expose that energy because it makes me too excitable. But if I stay with it, if I, circulate it in the body, then immediately I have 10 ideas for what to do for the day. That's why I did this video today. I woke up with one such dream and I said, okay, I'm not going to waste this energy. I'm going to do something creative. I'm going to put it in something useful. And you'll see how your mind becomes 5 times clearer. You become sparkly, you become magnetized. Others want to be around you. They find you sexy. They find you, you have more power over others. So this is a bit of a magic secrets, So thank you very much. I hope I was able to, to show you something interesting and how amazing the astrology works.